But what's clearly happening here, and I think the rape gangs, you don't mind me calling them rape gangs,
No,
because
please
they are
do.
rape gangs. What this has brought to light, and again, I do thank Elon, let's be blunt, because he's been able to sort of raise the parapet where maybe somebody in this country, given what I've just said previously, wouldn't want to do, is effectively expose the establishment. Now, we bandy the term establishment round like confetti. But in reality, Ken, what it is your chief constables, your senior politicians, your heads of government departments, your heads of quangos, your heads of councils who are paid an inordinate amount of money to serve and protect the people that they represent. These are the people who are now being exposed for what they failed to do over many, many years, decades in fact, to hundreds of thousands of white young girls. Because apparently, with certain demographics, as long as you're over 9, you're sexually active. Well, the last time I looked, they're not. And this is the problem that's now being exposed. So what we have now is a government that actually couldn't care less about the Muslim community. They couldn't care less about the Muslims. They're a voting bloc.
I was just about to say they want their votes.
The Labour Party used to look after working class because they voted for them. The sooner that the working class worked out that Labour wasn't really for them, they dropped the working class. So then they went to the middle class and the university educated. And once they started to realise that some of them probably weren't worth voting for, they dropped them. And of course, they've always dropped the elderly because, of course, they tend to vote Conservative. So my view is, Ken, that if the Martians were on their way to invade Earth, the Labour Party would be sending them out postal votes because they don't care who you are, what you do, as long as you vote for them. That's as simple as it is. This isn't about some love of Islam. They are the current flavour of the month for the Labour Party. And what's happened recently has been an exposure that you didn't do anything about these poor girls for years and years and years. We had a situation, and I do know this particularly, where rape gangs would be in a house. There'd be a dozen uncles, if I can use that term, and one white girl half naked. The police would turn up, having heard a commotion, and the police would arrest the white girl. I'll just let that land. The police would arrest the white girl. And there are occasions when the police didn't even ask for the names and addresses of the uncles who'd been anally raping the girl. So I apologise for anybody who feels that that's a little fruity language, but that's what we have. We have anal rape of young white girls by Pakistani rape gangs.
Yep, and I mean, this is what's come out recently. What I can't quite understand is that the notion that this had been going on has been going around now for about 15, 20 years. Now, it's been fairly common knowledge. Why is it that it's taken Elon Musk to get involved before the things being given any traction?
Community cohesion, cultural diversity. These trump the safety of our children in the eyes of some people. So social workers, I mean, there's a case of a social worker, and forgive me for giving you examples here, Ken, but a Muslim man married a 14-year-old girl, and you say to yourself, well, they can't marry a 14-year-old girl. Of course they can't. Well, they can in this country. And the social worker turned up at the wedding. So that tells you the complicit nature of the authorities.
Yeah.
So we're not just turning a blind eye, we're actually participating in the destruction of the innocence of white working class young girls. Now, if that's not a criminal offence, I don't know what is. And what I think we need going forward is not what the government has offered, which is, oh, from now on, you will be held accountable if you don't obviously announce that you know of such things. Actually, we need to go back and we need to hold account every single person who allowed that to happen, whether that be a social worker, whether that be a police officer of whatever rank. Those people need to have criminal charges. Now, whether those charges are criminal in the heavyweight going to prison, or whether they're malfeasance or misfeasance in a public office. I don't care what they are, but we cannot allow those people to either lose their job and just pass on their retirement.
It's a nice thought, David, but I think we both know that in the current climate of the current political parties, it's not going to happen.
No, in the current
so, okay, we can keep...
But I do think that's something that Reform can have in their backpack, because in 4.5 years' time, I'm convinced that Nigel will be the Prime Minister. And I do think this is something that he should promise the electorate. Whether it's possible is irrelevant, Ken. We should at least promise to act upon it, because it cannot be allowed that these children whose lives have been destroyed, and their parents, their friends, their communities, cannot be allowed to have nothing done to the perpetrators. And cultural diversity is irrelevant when you are raping a young girl.
One thing, you stood, I think I'm right in saying, as Police and Crime Commissioner for the Tory party. And one of the things that these PCCs were supposed to do was to have somebody there in charge of the police and able to direct the way that the police were operating and what they were doing. Now, it seems to me that they've completely failed in that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the original premise of the PCC probably sounded great on paper, as many of these things do, Ken. But what really happens is you've got a PCC who theoretically cannot control the operational direction of a police force, quite rightly. However, if you're the PCC, if I'm the PCC and you're the Chief Constable, and I have the right to decide whether you become the Chief Constable in the first place, then you're going to sort of fit in with my kind of views. And also, if you want me to extend your 5-year tenure, then you're going to fit in with my views. So we have Chief Constables who may or may not have the same view of their PCC, but they fall in line with their PCC. And you can clearly see that in the Metropolitan Police, where Sadiq Khan has basically ruined our capital city with a commissioner who, quite frankly, is as weak as water and doesn't stand up to Sadiq Khan. And so you have knife crime in the Met beyond belief, and yet suddenly he's rewarded with a knighthood. And what we see time and time again is mediocrity and incompetence rewarded, and it's the establishment looking inwards to themselves. And anybody outside the M25 is basically a far-right thug, as you well know, Ken. We've been had that epithet put at us many times. But ultimately, PCCs were supposed to hold the Chief Constable to account. Behind the PCC is what's called the PCP, and that's a group of councillors who sit holding the PCC to account. Now, on Merseyside, that is a group of people who are majority Labour councillors holding a Labour PCC to account. So I think you can see where I'm going with this. If you're marking your own homework, surprise, surprise, you'll pass the exam.